All right. Okay, we'll get started. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kathleen Woods. I am a library assistant at the Pacifica Sharp Park Library with San Mateo County Libraries. And I'm also the author of the novel White Wedding. I'm excited to be here tonight to welcome Dominic Lim, author of All the Right Notes. Before we begin, I wanted to let you know that next month on September 14th, San Mateo County Libraries will host Abby Blingett for a cooking demo and a discussion of her newest book, Mayumu, Filipino American Desserts Remixed. And this book is stunning. The pictures in it are amazingly gorgeous. So please grab a copy of it when they're in our collection. It's really beautiful. And we hope to see you there. As for tonight's logistics, your microphone and video will be turned off, but please feel free to use the chat and submit your questions in the Zoom Q&A. For those who would like to access live closed captions for this event, click on CC and then show subtitle, and you will have captions enabled. And now San Mateo County Libraries is thrilled to introduce Dominic Lim. Hello. Dominic Lim's debut novel, All the Right Notes, has received starred reviews from Booklist and Library Journal and has been named a Best New Book or Most Anticipated Novel by USA Today, the SF Chronicle, Goodreads, Book Riot, BuzzFeed, and Entertainment Weekly, who calls it a swoony, joyful rom-com to take readers into a love story worthy of a Broadway stage. Dominic is a member of the Writers Grotto and is a co-host of the long-running Babylon Salon reading and performance series in San Francisco. He holds a Master's of Music from Indiana University Jacobs School of Music, is an alum of Oberlin College and Conservatory of Music, and has sung with numerous professional early music and choral ensembles. As a proud member of the Actors Equity Association, he has performed off-Broadway and in regional productions throughout the US. He lives in Oakland with his loving and supportive husband, Peter, and their whiny cat, Phoebe, who I hear is basking in the sun right now and probably will not make a guest star appearance. Welcome, Dominic. Thank you so much for joining us and being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's so nice that we met before this. So yeah, at Babylon Salon, which we'll probably talk about later.
Yes.
But,
yes, a brief collision in the beautiful writing community of the Bay Area, which I value very much. And it helps when we're only now talking digitally that we have inhabited the same space at one time, right? Yeah,
we have.
So Dominic, as we're getting started, do you want to tell everyone, people may have read the book already, may not have read the book, a little bit about what All the Right Notes is all about?
Sure. Well, All the Right Notes is
there we go.
There it is. Yeah, right.
There it is.
All the Right Notes is a queer Asian rom-com. It's an adult contemporary romance, and it is about a Filipino pianist and composer and his second chance romance with a closeted Hollywood actor. And they meet. It takes place in two timelines. One is in the past when they meet in high school choir, of which his Kito's dad is the director, and in the present day when Kito has to recruit Emmett to sing at a benefit concert for his dad's retirement. So it's about trying to mend things that happened in the past, and it's a lot of music, there's a lot of food, there's a lot of stuff in it. It's fun.
Awesome. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much. And because you're mentioning, music, I have to get the temptation just to talk about musicals out of the way.
Yeah.
Musicals are referenced often in this book. And of course, Kito plays many of the standards of musical theater at his job at Broadway Baby in the opening of the book. So what is your favorite musical?
my favorite musical? My favorite musical, let's see. So I'm a big Sondheim fan, and that's probably not a surprise. So I think probably I would say Merrily We Roll Along. Or I am a fan of one of his musicals that literally no one ever says they like. Have you ever heard the musical Passion?
I've heard it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I have not heard it, but I know of it. I know it's one of his
it's actually one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of hit me at the right time and place in my life, and I think the music is absolutely beautiful. But those I'm a big Sondheim fan, so
I'll have to check out Passion. I love Sunday in the Park with George.
I love that too.
You know,
Yeah,
of course, any creative person, I think,
yeah, totally.
It's hard to resist. I have a little collage in my writing office of writers writing lying down, and I have a picture of Sondheim on a couch.
Oh, he always wrote lying down.
To nap
Yeah,
while writing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think your characters have any favorite musicals? If you had to guess.
Let's see.
We can get to know them a little bit, maybe through what.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Goto is he's a pianist composer, so I think that he would probably pick a Sondheim musical as well. Probably something like Sweeney Todd, something very involved, or possibly like Bernstein, Bernstein, like West Side Story. And I think Emmett, who is the love interest, probably Rent, because that's
I was
musical.
going to guess Rent somehow. It feels right.
I think that's just so right for him, right? Yeah. And he and Quito connect with that musical in the past. So
awesome, especially like a musical with a lot of queer themes could fall to someone who is struggling maybe with their queer identity, or at least not expressing it. Okay, so before we get too much more into the plot and the actual text of the book, I was thinking about musicality in this book, and like you said, music's it's a huge part of it. This idea of falling into some kind of rhythm with each other. Music and love are intertwined here. And you got to make this book into an audiobook, and I wondered the process of that. Maybe some of you have listened to the audiobook. We do have it available at the library, the audiobook version. Like, what was that process like of making sound part of your book?
Yeah. So I like most authors, technically the only connection I had to the audiobook was signing off on the narrator, or at least giving my feedback. And but that was the best part, because he ended up being someone that I knew. He's I got the email from my audiobook producer, and it was two people, one of whom has done a lot of audiobooks, won a lot of awards, and then this other guy who's never done a single one. But his name is Aaron Albano, and he's a Broadway vet, and we did Miss Saigon together like 20 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah. And whereas I quit, he kept going. He's been working on Broadway like the whole time. So he just finished a stint in Hamilton, actually, and he just just found out. He told me that he's now in there's a new musical on Broadway called Here Lies Love. It's like a full Filipino cast, and he just got hired to be one of the swings. So he's back on the boards. Yeah. And he didn't have any experience doing the audiobook, but I called the producer right there, and I was like, you need to pick Aaron, because first of all, I know him. Second, like, you have to have music in this book, and he's going to sing it. Like, I don't know if the other guy can sing, but I definitely know that Aaron can sing. So, and she was like, I was thinking the same thing. So he does sing in the book. So I highly encourage all of you to go get the audiobook from the library, and get it, because you'll hear him sing the parts that are important. Yeah.
That's so cool. That so brings. There is a song in this book that especially is extremely important, right? It's Quito's song that he wrote when he was young. So that's really exciting that's so cool. I have not listened to it. I haven't listened to it, so I'm gonna have to go find it to listen to the song be brought to life to these different characters. Also, if you don't have a copy of the book yet, all the song lyrics are very coolly printed in the back at the end, as well as some scripts of kind of imadgined musicals are within the book too, which I thought was really, really fun to get to as a fun bonus. I don't remember what reviewer wrote, liked my book, but then said also slightly overstuffed. And I was like, are you talking about all the stuff in the back? There's a lot of stuff in the back. I say, like, put as much stuff in your book as possible, right? Like, there should have been another full musical in here if I like to pick. But we'll get back to the idea of musicals too. I must resist.
Right.
Truly, it would be a problem. Okay, so let's think about other parts of this book. One of the things that really struck me while I was reading was the different ways characters seem to like inhabit and express or reject like masculinity as an idea. That's for characters, whether they're gay or they're straight or they're non-binary or discovering kind of on a gender journey, identifying as non-binary when the book begins. And there's this one place where we're in a flashback, we're in high school, and Goto refers to fist bumping as part of all that coded language of masculinity that was completely beyond him, like fist bumps and guys being guys. Can you speak a little bit about how you approached the idea of masculinity in this book, or why it felt important as an element of the story?
Yeah, I'll speak directly to that scene that quote that you just said, because to me that is absolutely how I felt in high school, that there is this mystifying way that boys, because we were really boys, we weren't men, that boys acted around each other, that was the code for being, cool, for being straight acting. And I actually came out in high school, so after a while it didn't really matter, but before that I was always very aware of how to present, how to move my body, how to walk. I mean, I remember in middle school, I didn't know yet. I just I let out a shriek or a scream, or and I totally got made fun of it. And I think all queer boys growing up, especially of my generation, know what I'm talking about. And so I put that in this book because it is a way of, that is how we navigate through the world as we're growing up. There's no escaping it as a queer man, queer boy, or queer women, I would say too, probably, is that we are always constantly aware of these codes of masculinity and femininity. And so it's in there. It is in this book because it is part of my background. But I will say that it is expressly in my second book, because because that is actually the entire theme of my second. This one is more about music. It's about the connections of family and music and the different kinds of love languages. And the second one is really all about masculinity, femininity, because it's about a drag queen and his journey of acceptance. So I guess it's something that really resonates with me, and that's why it found its way into the book.
And I know in this book too, it does provide a little bit of one element of plot tension too. Like Emmett is this action movie star.
Yeah.
So there's this fear too that like if he comes out, will he lose roles that are really coded so strongly with a certain kind of masculinity? He's already like one of the first, or he's talked about as one of the first like Asian American men who's in these huge action roles too.
Right.
Yeah. But okay, your second book, which I saw you post on social media that you've just turned in a manuscript to your editor. Do you mind telling us the title of this book?
Yeah, it's called Karaoke Queen, and it takes place in the same universe, although it is not about Ujima, which people usually think it is. It's not, although the third book probably will be. But it is about an ex-drag queen who, I guess the elevator pitch is that he runs into an ex-boyfriend of his who runs a failing bar in Oakland. And in order to save the failing bar, he puts on a karaoke show and realizes that he needs to MC it, but as his old drag persona.
Oh, okay.
But he doesn't want his ex-boyfriend to know, because of different reasons in the past and issues of femininity, whatever. Doesn't want his ex-boyfriend to know that he is the drag queen. So it's like kind of bosom buddies, Tootsie, like meets Kinky Boots, sort of. But the twist is that as he's going through this whole comedy of errors where he's trying to be two people at the same time, is that he enlists a doppelganger. He lists a guy who kind of looks like him to be his double.
Oh my God, amazing.
And so goes through this whole the drag montage of teaching him how to walk in heels and everything. But the twist is that he starts to fall in love with this guy because he sees his reflection in him and starts to accept the fact that being femme is beautiful. Being feminine, having femininity is gorgeous too. So it's a love triangle. Yeah.
I love that. That's great. And this is also, you made me think, flip frantically for a different quote that's not in our other questions, but this is also a great opportunity to plug that San Mateo County Libraries has just started loaning out karaoke machines. So if you want to borrow a karaoke machine for a week, head to your local library branch and see if it's available. They are currently in luck items. So if they're there, you're in luck. You can pick one up. You'll be able to reserve them in advance in the future. But yeah, karaoke machines, new library resource. I'm trying to remember. So that idea of like falling in love with someone or seeing yourself reflected in them, and with acceptance or with fear or with tension, is something that comes up in this book as well.
It does.
Can you talk a little bit about that idea, or like this idea that you desire what you see?
That too, that's also something that I'm very interested in. And I think that one of the themes, some of the themes in this book are truly seeing and truly hearing what's in the world. I think the hearing part is pretty self-explanatory because there's a lot of music, and it's sort of learning to listen to that language of music, and knowing what that means, but also seeing what's in front of you, the awareness of. And I think what you might be talking about is that I think at a certain point Quito says that he sees who he is in Emmett, and that the people that he loves the most, he's able to see the most truest form of himself in them. And that I think that's true about most of us, is that we are different things to different people. The way we act in work, or in a social situation, is completely different to how we act to our friends, our family, or our spouses. And I think that, to me, the theory is that we should see the clearest picture of who we are in how we are with the people who are closest to us, right? Yeah. So because sometimes I can feel like a total stranger when I'm talking to someone who I'm like trying to impress, trying to persuade in some way, that's not necessarily who I am. But I am absolutely who I am 100% with my husband, for example, or my family. So
it can be instructive too, right? Like there's this idea, it's on page 234, so it's kind of far in, so I won't say too much, but this idea that maybe there are also some people you don't feel you can show who you fully are. So you can never see it reflected back, because if there's not that trust and love there can't be that vulnerability as well.
Right.
It's a cycle of things, right? It's a very beautiful element of this book that I loved a lot.
Thanks.
And the way music is part of that, and what a song can mean to different characters when they share a feeling of the importance of a song. It's like such a lovely thing.
Thank you.
Why? Okay, I'm jumping around to my questions a little bit, and I see that we're getting questions in the Q&A too, which I'm very happy about. Please keep giving us those. I'll fold those in a little bit. Why? I mean, I guess this is like the whole sort of like a crucial part of the book. So saying why is it important in this book is maybe the wrong way to phrase this question. But I guess what was interesting to you about exploring romantic connection and artistic connection together? Why not just write a romance book without art, drawing people together?
Art is so important to me, because my background really is first as a musician and also an actor later. And that's why the series of books that I'm going to be writing with the imprint there's always a theme of music or art in it, or dance or something. So it's my background, first of all. And then the second thing is that, to me, there is, for anyone who is a musician, there is this really weird phenomenon when you are an ensemble. So that can mean a choir or a symphony orchestra, or even a singer with an accompanist, or two people playing violin at the same time as a violin duet, where the more attuned you are to each other, the better the experience is, right? And so when I've performed with higher level groups or ensembles, and it's not to say that they're professional, because even when I was in the Oakland Youth Chorus, I was in this group called Vocal Motion, and we were kids, but it was like the highest caliber kids, high school age kids from all around the Bay Area. And it is this sense of like when you perform and when you sing, you're almost not even, particularly when you're a singer, sometimes you don't even know if it's the sound that you're hearing is what's coming out of your mouth or if it's coming out of the person next to you. Like that's how connected you can be to someone. Or when I have a friend, Katie Lua, she's a pianist, and she and I used to collaborate on a lot of things where I would sing and I absolutely knew she was going to be with me every single note and every single rest. I knew that she would know exactly when I was going to take a breath. And that to me is so profound. It is almost mystical. And that's exactly what love is to me, that connection, right? It's so similar. It's like, it's deep, it's subconscious. It's like you can't even have words for it, but you feel it. So I think that's why it was so easy for me to write that into this book.
Yeah. And it does so much of the work of establishing, and I think revealing to the reader the deep connection between the characters who are so close and who do fall in love with each other, who have been in love with each other from youth. Like just knowing how it is for them to make music together is like communicates their deep and like you said, like almost mystical connection in such an effective way within the text too. You know, you don't need to say like, you don't really need to say more. There is more here as well, but you don't almost need to. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I think one more question before I start to bring in we'll start to fold in some of the audience questions. You know, we were talking about music, talking about art, but also, as you mentioned, this book also has a lot to do with food. Well, I'm thinking of also all these like sensory elements of the way people interact with each other and share with each other. Quito and his father especially prepare meals often for like Emmett or for each other. You know, what was the importance of food to you in this story about love and connection? Why food?
I really have to thank Alex Logan, who is my editor, for bringing out that element in my book, because it actually wasn't very conscious of me to include food, but she said it's here and it's vivid and I want more of it. So there actually was less before she brought it up. But I think there are two reasons for that. One is that this book is about the different kinds of love languages. So there's music and there are the different kinds of love. So not just between two men who you know, fall in love with each other, but friends, roommates, father, son, you know, there's different ways of communicating love. And so that ties into the second thing, which is that because I'm Filipino, so I mean, I say I'm Filipino, but I also think that probably there's no culture in the world that wouldn't say this, but the way that we express love to our loved ones is to cook for them, right? So I think especially with a lot of Asian cultures where we may not be as verbal about how we love each other. We don't say, you know, we don't say I love you every morning or whatever, but you know that they love you because they made a meal for you. I found this with my husband actually, is that he's more verbal, right? He's more verbal about those kinds of things, but I am the one who cooks. So it's like, I'm like, oh, I don't say I love you all the time. It's fine because I cook you dinner. And I kind of joke about that, but it is the way that I have experienced. That's the way that my mom said that she loved me, right? That she cooked meals for us and she made it in a special way. So I think that's why it ended up in there. And also it was very important for me to make this a very Filipino book, because that was extremely important for me to have Filipino representation on the shelves and to be able to add to it. And you know, one of the simplest ways of representing one's cultures is through food.
There's a great line, and I won't really explain the context around it because it's late in the book, but of the narrator asking, "Are you hungry?" So typically Filipino of a question, that immediate instinct to feed our loved ones, the need to sustain them. So like cute, yeah. Very, very. It's also just pleasurable to read. So I'm glad it made its way.
Did it make you hungry? It's like, I don't read this on an empty stomach because
right, or without like a soundtrack really, or cast very close by. And someone actually, a question from a patron is thanking you for including a recipe And was there a reason why you included it? And I think you've kind of answered that question, but how did you pick the recipe that you did include in the back?
So again, that was my editor's suggestion, is to include a recipe. Editors do a lot of work, by the way. Yeah, so she said, pick a. Actually, okay. So I'll let you in on a little secret. So
yeah.
She wanted to have a recipe in the book, and she her first idea was to do cross promotion and to ask like a Filipino chef to provide a recipe. And she reached out to a couple, and it looked like it was going to happen. And then at a certain point, she says, "I'm not sure if we're going to get this in on time. Maybe you should just provide something from your mom." And I said, "You know what? This is probably better. I appreciate that it would be a fun way to cross promote with a personality, but it would actually mean a lot more to me and probably to the reader to include a recipe that is personal to me." And that is, so I asked my mom, I was like, "Can you give me the recipe for chicken tinola?" And so, she did. And she's like, "Should I put the bouillon cube thing in there? Because I know everyone does chicken stock these days." I was like, "It's your recipe." So yeah. But yeah, it is important to me because it represents my family. So
yeah, that's great. It's just, there's something so wonderful about lyrics, a musical, Q&A, and a recipe. It's, again, all the more things you can put in a book.
Overstuffed.
With food, though, so it's okay.
It's okay.
Okay, let's see. Here's two questions that I'm going to kind of pull together from patrons or from people who are here in the audience. How did you approach writing this book, and what made you choose to do the switching between the past and the present timeline? Like, how did you compose the book this way, I guess?
Yeah, I like to say that it was because I was lazy and I didn't want to cut out all the backstory. I guess you're an author, right? It's like people are like, you can use backstory, but use it sparingly because people are going to get bored. And I was like, but I want like all of it. So I wrote two timelines, and it was, I don't even remember. I think I knew that both timelines had to have an arc, right? They had to have both have a narrative arc. And then at a certain point, I was like, I think it makes sense if something happens in the present that calls back to something that happens in the past, and sometimes maybe vice versa, or something happens in the past that will sort of foreshadow what happens in the future. So that's what I ended up doing, and it was this sort of careful sketching out of like what happens in each timeline. And I think that most people appreciate it. Actually, when I was selling the book, there were a couple of agents who were like, I don't know that I can wrap my head around this, because it isn't an easy ask. Most people are not used to that kind of thing. But I think that most people kind of dig it, because it does kind of give you a little back and forth feeling.
Yeah, especially because there's such a long gap in the characters' lives.
Right.
From when they last saw each other to when they meet again. Like, literally, they haven't spoken, like Emma and Goto haven't spoken for decades. So there's something, like, it seems to work. It seems to be like the text seems to want us also that it would make sense that there are times when they're kind of living in the past, or that the narrator is having these memories more strongly now than maybe in a long time, because the person's in front of them again. So
it's also kind of musical to me, because I think musicals work best when there are leitmotifs, when there are themes that keep coming back, right? So I always, people say sometimes they say they write their book as a movie, and I envision mine as a musical for sure. I mean, if you didn't get that, then
I have a question about that I'm also saving. But that also, I'm thinking about you mentioning Merrily We Roll Along being a favorite musical, and of course that one moves backwards.
Moves back and forth in time.
So back and forth. So look at that. My novel, it started off that I thought I was going to be writing it. It started as a short story, but then I was going to write it chronologically. Anyway, but then as I talked to my thesis advisor, he was like, it's really boring this way. Like, it has to be this nested narrative, and I had to like tear it all apart. And so it's funny how
it's a lot of work, right?
The form demands itself.
Right, exactly.
It was a lot of work, but it was the right move.
Worth it,
I can't imagine it being the other way now. Just like, I'm sure you can't imagine yours not including this back and forth here. Oh, I had a question. Okay, so speaking of things starting as short stories, I read in your interview with the Big Gay Fiction podcast that you mentioned that this really charming, heart-lifting novel started out as a sad short story. So what was your experience of letting this story unfold in a lighter direction of both like filling it out, but I mean, and also like, you know, balancing, there are still heavy themes captured in this book. And there's, it's not like it's all lightness and butterflies, but it does get to inhabit like a more lighthearted genre overall. Yeah, what was that?
It is overall, yeah. And I will say that I've had at least 4 or 5 people who it tends to be a very popular plane book. People take on their vacation, and I've had at least 4 people come to me and go, I was crying on a plane because of this book. Like, you should have, like, that's really embarrassing, Dominic.
Who doesn't cry on a plane?
Well, I know who doesn't cry on a plane.
I was sobbing at Thelma and Louise on a plane. Like,
right, that's
so it's fine. Like sobbing.
Yeah. Yeah, but to answer your question, yeah. So because I started off writing, I think as a lot of writers do, start writing short stories, and most of my short stories were in the literary vein. You know, so a lot of them were really serious, and this one was about a pianist who witnesses his lover being killed in a terrorist accident. I mean, a terrorist attack. And it's one of these weird short stories where he's playing piano and the bomb goes off in the audience. It's all about like the stalling of time, how things can happen within the seconds, the ticking of the seconds. But anyway,
in the brain. Like
the brain, right? The brain slows down and everything starts to happen. And I had in my head, I'm going to fill this out, everything that comes before, everything that comes after, and it just would not work. And I put it away, and then I was actually taking this novel writing class just to see what it was like. And I said, oh, let me take this back. And I said, this is not me at all. The only thing about me in it was the music. So I kept the music. Oh, and the queer element. I kept the queer element. I kept the music. I tossed everything out. And I said, what's fun? And I was like, a piano bar. And actually, my first draft was, it starts in the piano bar. It doesn't start in high school. So I was like, I'm going to write a really fun piano bar scene. And that's where it went. It just went. It just went where my heart wanted it to go. Where I thought, where can I have fun for the next 300 pages? You know.
Which is a more, I think, challenging question for a writer than many people realize. We get kind of trained to think if we're having fun, we're not writing correctly. So I don't know if you've had this experience. Like, it should be labor and exhausting, which it always still is. But you have to find some delight in it too, right?
Yeah. I know. I mean, it is work. It is work, and there are elements of it that are hard. But it has to be something you enjoy, right?
Yeah.
At some point.
I think about George Saunders talking about how he used to write things that people would be like, yeah, a lot going on here. And then he was at his day job, he was writing silly song lyrics or silly rhymes.
Yes.
And his coworker started laughing at them. And he was like, oh, wait, I could write things that people enjoy reading.
Yeah.
Swim in the pond in the rain. He talks about this. But he's like, oh, wait, I can have fun with things that don't ever, it doesn't have to be how complex can I make this? How heady can I be? Of course, he's still a very heady writer, but anyway, sorry. I'm prone to aside.
I am too.
Okay, this is just a small question, but I love something about Keto's character, that he rhymes when he's nervous. And one of the only characters early on that seems to notice or even like calls him out on it is Emmett. That, there's things like, one of my favorites is when he's like saying, enjoy my boy, in a really awkward goodbye as a high school student. How did you come up with this as a character trait? And do you have a favorite rhyme that you gave these characters?
I tend to, well, it's a rom-com, first of all. So I mean, I think as authors, it is important for us to write fully realized characters. And to be honest, the easiest thing is to give someone a quirk or some sort of, fault, or, so I gave him a quirk. And the reason why I gave it a rhyming quirk is because he's a composer. So I felt like he's always in his head, like coming up with rhyming schemes anyway for songs. so that it just comes out at strange, awkward situations. So especially Enjoy My Boy is a horror. Like, why would you ever say that?
And it's like, for context for this scene, he's like, it's a high school boy saying goodbye to another high school boy on like a porch after kind of like a you know, there's like been a romantic tension time hanging out, and it's just like
it's cringe. Yeah.
But it's so sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. It does actually come up, and I didn't add this until very late, that it does come up in a more serious way when you find out that, well, maybe I shouldn't give it away, but he does end up rhyming in actually a serious situation, which ends up saving where he had thought that he had done something wrong to Emmett. And Emmett told him, no, you didn't. You actually ended up rhyming it to me. And yeah, so yeah. So it comes up in different situations.
Yeah. And you can kind of understand how it got implanted in, like, it's something Emmett knows about him too, you know, so strongly. I guess I'm sort of circling back to genre, but as your answer also talked about how this is a rom-com. What were the most exciting and the most challenging parts of writing a rom-com? Like, how much did you think about genre, and do you have like a favorite rom-com trope, something that you're like, oh, I'm definitely going to use this, things you wanted to avoid or change?
Yeah, it's weird. I actually, so I there's another author who came out with a male romance this year. His name is Sid Karger. He came out with Best Men, a book called Best Men, and we had dinner in New York when I was there last time. And it's funny, he said it's very similar to me. He ended up on a panel. It's like his first panel. It was at the Strand bookstore in New York City, very famous bookstore. It was with other romance authors, and they started asking him, like, so what's your favorite romance trope? And he said, I don't know what that is. And it's similar to me, right? I ended up writing a romance / rom-com, and I didn't know that that's what it was until it was done. Not even until it was done, until I started querying agents. And I was like, I had to figure out what this book was and how to sell it and what my comps were. And I was like, I think I wrote a rom-com. I mean, mostly, right? I mean, it does get a little sad, but it's mostly a rom-com. So that's what it is. That's what I pitched it as. And I think the hardest part of it was actually the humor. And humor is really, really hard to write. And again, going back to Sid Karger, for any of you who haven't read Best Men, it is one of these books where I don't understand how people can write humor like this. It's so, because it's so rare, right? And I think it is humorous at sometimes. The book that I wrote, I think mostly the humor comes from Ujima and her snappy one-liners. And so I do have a little bit of that in me, but I actually had to add all the humor like at the end, most of it at least, because it's not something I naturally think about when I'm in my narrative. And in my second book, which is more humorous, my agent, when I sent her the first copy, she's like, you have to add more humor to this. And it's like, okay.
It's such a hard ask.
It is a really hard ask.
It makes sense that you were able to do it like I feel like most of the humor comes through character, right? So you have your characters, and you kind of find ways in which either their awkwardness is funny, or the situations are funny, or the way they are funny, like Ujima is funny. Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I always think everything I've written is the least funny thing I've ever written, and then people always laugh at it because I think I just learned that sometimes the way I see the world and I don't think it's a joke is funny to people, and that works for me. So
and that's really funny. And that's I think that's the best kind of funny, when it's that natural sort of weird. It only really can come from one kind of person funny. You know, anyone can write a joke, right? But everyone, if you have that really strange point of view.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Again, you see yourself reflected back at you in the world, right? Yeah. Okay. There's a question in the chat, actually, but from someone who says, it's delightful to see you in person again. To Dominic. I miss singing with you. I haven't yet read the book and plan to, but I didn't realize that there are imagined musicals and lyrics within. I'm curious as to whether you have ever created a musical or wanted to.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Hi, Jane. It's nice to see you. Or hear from you at least. Okay, so I see it here. Okay, I'm curious as to whether you've ever. I have never created a musical because I'm not really a composer, unfortunately. I am a musician, I'm a writer. I don't really write music. My brother's a composer, my little brother. So I haven't. I would love to, and I would write a book for one. I kind of did already.
Two in here,
Yeah,
really.
right.
You have a jukebox musical in here too.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's true. Yeah, there's a jukebox
uh-huh.
musical in there. Oh, by the way, that jukebox musical, let me tell you a story about that. So when I was
We're
writing the
talking
book,
about a musical within the book.
Yes,
it's
sorry.
A character is part of. A character is performing in. Yeah.
Yes, and it's called Wonderland because all of the songs in it are one-hit wonders. Okay, so there's a reason why this came to be. I had to have a musical in the book somehow, and I was like, I'm gonna write a jukebox musical because those are by and far horrible, except for except Aunt Julia. I just saw Aunt Juliet on Broadway, by the way. It's amazing. Okay. But anyway, so I was like, I need to have this. It's got to be comedic in some way, like bad. So my first thought was, oh, Britney Spears. Like, it's going to be a Britney Spears jukebox musical. So I had written this entire draft with Britney Spears, and then I was like online one day. I was like,
lo and behold, what
someone
is on Broadway?
Freaking put together Britney Spears jukebox musical. So I had to change the whole thing.
Every Upon a Time or something like that, right?
Which I actually might watch. But anyway, so I was like, this cannot happen again. I need to find someone that they are not going to make a musical out of. I was like, what about a bunch of people they're not going to make a musical out of? So that's why it came. That's why it was one-hit wonders.
Which is very, very fun. And what a fun challenge to think about where you would put a one-hit wonder in a dramatic moment, right? In a musical, if a song has to happen. It has to happen. Like, where will you find spaces for these one-hit wonders? It's very fun. Do you have any? One of my questions was if there's a book besides this book, and maybe especially this book, that you have ever thought about. Oh, I'd love if this were a musical, or I wish I had the composing ability to make this musical.
Yeah, that's a tough question. So there's a YA book that came out, oh my God, almost 20 years ago now, but it's called King Dork by Frank Portman. And it's perfect for a musical because he's actually a musician himself. Like, I think a lot of the book came from his experiences writing music. And I think the title itself came from a song that he wrote. So, and again, it is one of the, I don't know, you need to go get this from your library. It's called King Dork. It's YA, but it is one of these books, or I swear to God, I was laughing out loud wherever I was. Like, you can't hold it back. You were laughing out loud. It is so funny. And the whole thing is music. So that's one. I think, so in a very, do you know the musical Fun Home?
Talk about weeping to art.
Right?
It's probably, I still got to see it in New York at Circle in the Square.
Yep.
Probably the most incredible theater experience I've ever had.
So powerful.
But it's still, even if you can't see that production of it, if you can see any production of it, anyone,
And for those of you who don't know, it's based on the graphic novel Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, which itself is autobiographical about her coming out experience, but also her father's coming out experience, and her father ended up committing suicide. So it is so, like, who would ever write a musical about that, right? And yet it is so beautiful. And I think in the same way, I think that The Death of Vivek Oji by Akweke Meiji, I think is their name, is just so beautiful and gorgeous and profound and also sad, but there are just so many beautiful characters in it that I think it would make an amazing musical.
Fun Home also. Fun Home is just perfectly written, like the book, like the book of the musical, not the. I mean, the graphic novel is too, but it's just like stunningly written. And it was that book writer and lyric writer is her first musical. You might already know that. She had done plays, but Lisa Kron had not done a musical.
That's right, Lisa Kron, right?
I'm very inspiring to me. I have a small dream of turning We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson into a musical someday, because it's so little and it has a song in the opening, a village number, but I can't sing or dance or write music, so we'll see.
You just have to find a partner.
Okay. What is your go-to karaoke song? This is a question from someone in the audience. Your go-to karaoke song?
Yeah, so actually my go-to karaoke song is In All the Right Notes. It is the song that that Quito has to sing in front of Emmett at
Mhm.
Acapalooza
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
Oberlin, which is Father Figure by George Michael. That's
Yeah.
definitely my go-to karaoke song. I love George Michael. I've been watching all of George Michael's. I don't know why there's like 3 or 4 George Michael documentaries out right now, and
Mm.
I've watched every single one
Yeah.
of them.
Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, favorite song or the favorite
Favorite
documentary?
documentary one? Yeah.
I don't even remember what they're all called, but
Mm.
I think the one that just came out, I don't remember. One of them, I don't remember. I should have pulled them up,
Yeah.
but they're all good.
Feel free to share your go-to karaoke song in the chat
In the
if you
chat.
wish. We'd love to hear it. Mine is Maybe This Time from Cabaret. And I just said I can't sing, so
Whoa,
it's sorry
no,
to
but
everyone.
that's such
I
a
can
great.
emote.
You're actually, you know what? You're not actually supposed to sing. A really
Mhm.
good singer is actually not supposed to sing that song
Yeah,
because that's the whole
exactly.
point of that character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and isn't that the whole thing? Like the whole problem with Liza Minnelli as that character in Cabaret, they're like,
Mhm.
she's too good. Like it's not
Mhm.
supposed to be that good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear others. Okay, so I have one more question, and we have another question from the audience. I would love if anyone else has other questions, please do submit them to the Q&A. So one of my other questions, again, we're a little outside the book, but you're very involved in the Bay Area writing community. You're one of the hosts of Babylon Salon, as we mentioned in your bio. And then, yeah, that which is a series that's been around for, I think, 17 years. Is it 16, 17?
Yeah.
It uplifts so many local writers. Can you talk a little bit about the Bay Area writing community and how curious writers or aspiring writers might find their place in it?
Yeah, so I did not get an MFA, although it is something that I thought about. But I actually think that if there is any place other than New York to not have to get an MFA, I feel like it's the Bay Area. I mean, there are so many amazing writers here, so many amazing, you're one of them. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I've learned so much from just taking classes and being mentored by some of the local writers here. Um, at the Writers Grotto, for example, and the way that I got into the Writers Grotto, by the way, is that I was a fellow in 2020, and then they gave me full membership. And this is before I had written like anything. So they was um, they have this weekly monthly reading series called Reading and Meeting, and it's put on once a month. And what I love about it is that the times that I've been, there have always been like 1 or 2 people who are not members of the Writers Grotto, but they've come because they saw it on social media or whatever, but they are writers, right? Or they're thinking of doing an MFA, or they're, in an MFA program. And that is exactly how you connect with other writers, is by going to readings, going up to talk to them afterwards, going to talk to people in the audience because they are most likely writers as well. Yeah, I'm sorry. What am I answering your
No,
question
that's
right?
perfect. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
totally the answer.
that's how you create your community. And online, obviously, it's so easy to find a group online. It's so easy to write in a bubble, and it's so hard to like make yourself, go out there. But it's so important because it's important not just for your own writing, like your own writing and your own process, because they're going to help you, they're going to support you. It's also, and I hate to say this, but it's also really important for your career. And you know this, is that once you get out there and once you start trying to get your book out there or get noticed, or you need the support of other people to write blurbs for you, to help get your name out there, and you in turn need to do the same. Yeah. And I'm a big proponent of, when I started the Writers Grotto, I was going to all these events all the time. And people are like, why do you're showing up to all these events? And I'm like, I'm a musician. And my background is, you go to every concert, you go to every recital in your studio, right? Like, you support all your studio mates, all your colleagues, because that's how you show support. And I think that's the same thing for the writing community. Show up, be there, support your colleagues, and they'll support you.
You get to hear some really exciting work too.
And yes,
like,
exactly. And you get to be inspired.
Benefit. And to remember how many possibilities there are in writing. Like like as your experience was, the market will tell you what genre you're in.
Yeah.
You'll be informed of that later on.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
While you're writing, you don't have to, it can be exciting to not think about that and to read the wild stuff people are doing. And if you ever, there's a lot of monthly series like the Happy Endings show.
Yes.
There's of course Babylon Salon, which is quarterly. There's the Racket reading series, which is monthly. Then more, there are way more than that.
There's a lot.
San Mateo County Libraries will also be hosting our first Indie Author Fest next month, September 16th. So if you're interested in that, check that out on our website. And if you're an indie writer or an aspiring writer interested in meeting other writers on the peninsula, if you don't want to travel into San Francisco to do that. And then, okay, this is from an audience member.
Yeah.
Excited to read your future books too. What are you reading? What would you like to recommend? And maybe also like, were there any things you were reading while writing All the Right Notes that felt informative of that process?
So when I will say there was a point where I was writing All the Right Notes and I started reading finally Zadie Smith. Was it White Teeth? Is that the name? Wait.
That's like the huge one, right?
Yeah, I had it for some reason it had been on my bedside table for years and I finally picked it up and that was a huge mistake for me because it was like one of those books where I was like, I really don't know how to write. When you read a book, you're like, this makes me feel bad. So I put it away. I think it's really important. I think it's really important when you're writing, you really need to be very strategic about the books that you read. For me, I can't read something that's too close to what I'm writing because then it gets really mixed up in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I also can't read something that is just very, very, very different because then I start to get pulled in a very strange direction.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not to say that I don't read while I write, but if I'm very involved in the writing process, I actually tend to not read because it kind of disrupts what I'm doing. But having said that, and I haven't read almost anything in the past like 2.5 months because I've been trying to get my manuscript out. But having said that, I am very excited to read Forgiving Imelda Marcos by Nathan Go, who's another Filipino writer, and he just had his debut a couple weeks ago, around the same time as me. And he's now in the Philippines, but he was here in the US for his launch. And I'm very excited about that. What else? I read Rita Chang Epic's book, which was amazing. Deep as the sky, red as the sea. That was amazing and inspirational. I do love reading books that make me feel inspired as a writer. Yeah. And even when I wanted to throw White Teeth at the wall because it made me feel horrible about myself, it was it was amazing. And also she was like, what, like 20 when she wrote it or something? Whatever. I mean,
I can't think of it. It makes me feel faint. It's, it is also sort of maybe, I don't know, can we say like a humbling victory to like hold your own book in your hands even after that crisis?
Yeah, right. Look, I did it.
And you're like Quito has moments of professional crisis too.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about. I wonder. Yeah. Because I know you changed. I mean, you changed your trajectory. You changed your artistic career. You stayed in art, but yeah.
Writing was sort of a pre-midlife crisis turn for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to say that I am like Quito in that he lost his artistic compass and found it again in Quito. And it's the same for me. I lost my artistic compass and I found it again in writing.
Yeah.
It's not that I turned my back on music or acting or theater or anything like that. I love them all. I love all of it, but I wasn't going to make a career out of those things. For my own.
It's making me think of the show Somebody Somewhere, when the main character says like, I love music, but it also breaks my heart. And she's kind of, yeah.
I love that. Oh my God.
It's a beautiful show. She does sing in it too. Bridget Everett plays the main character. Anyway, a patron asked, isn't there a play about Imelda? That's
yes, there is. It's called Here Lies Love, and I think I mentioned it earlier. That's it's on Broadway right now. It's it used to be off Broadway like 10 years ago or 8 years ago. And it is they took out all the seats in a Broadway theater and made it into a nightclub. So some of the tickets that you buy are on the dance floor, and you move around with the show. Like you get moved around to certain parts of the theater, and it is all about Imelda Marcos. It is not outright support. I will say this: it's not outright supportive of Imelda Marcos. There's a lot of controversy about the show, actually. But it does make you think about her and that regime. So while you're in a nightclub.
You're in a nightclub. Very Wonderland of it to be.
Yes, exactly.
And very great comet as well. I wonder, okay, maybe one of my last questions, because I think we haven't totally talked about this, is, writing, you're writing a queer rom-com, a gay rom-com at a time when, let's talk about like, not controversy, but there can be a feeling of pressure or people maybe having an angry reaction to a story that's just involving gay characters. Like, was that something that felt, how do I even ask this? Like, not important to write because it's just life, like life.
No, it was important to write, honestly. And thank you for that. Your instinct is right. It was actually very important for me to write this story at this time. And I am lucky that it is this time, because I don't think that I could have published this book even like 5 or 6 years ago, honestly, to be honest. It is hitting at exactly the right time where people are open to this, because before that we've had gay literature for a long time, since forever, honestly, right? But it's only recently, I think I read an article, Andrew Sean Greer, where the whole thing was like, I just wanted to write a happy gay book, right? With less, and then less is more. And it's true, like, because as I was growing up, all the gay literature that I was able to seek out was always about trauma, traumatic experiences, or oppression, or being, hated or attacked or in the closet or whatever. So I wanted to write something that was not about that at all. And that's how it ended up being a romance, right? Because the defining aspect of a romance is that it has to have a happy ever after. And that was very important to me, that it had to have a happy ever after, and that the conflict did not come from trauma or being, there's a little bit of being in the closet there, but not too much. So that was important to me, and I welcome anyone who doesn't like, who I like to say, like, if it gets banned in the library, bring it, because I will fight. I will fight. Not San Mateo.
No, we were very happy to have it in our collection, to have it as a giveaway book as well. I hope many people here got to have it as a giveaway, and those who will watch this talk.
Yeah, you guys are amazing.
All right, we're kind of at our end moments. This has been so lovely. Thank you for this great conversation. Thank you everyone who joined us tonight. I don't know, Dominic, if you have any last words before I give my final words to the audience here.
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. If you've read it, thank you so much. If you haven't, please go check it out at your library. I am getting the feeling that most Bay Area libraries are carrying it, which is fantastic. So please go get a copy, or wherever you are, and enjoy that way, or you could buy it.
Awesome. And then please check out our upcoming author talks at San Mateo County Libraries. You can go to smcl.org/author talks to find out what's coming up. And we would also appreciate it if you could tell us how we did with this program at smcl.org/rate this event. You'll receive those links in a follow-up email, as well as a link to this recorded talk, so you can revisit any of these moments if you need a musical recommendation, for example. Besides that, have a great night, everyone. And thank you so much again, Dominic. This was really wonderful to chat.
This was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank everyone.
Goodbye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.